make about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.
Hello, and welcome to Candidates Up Front. This series of interviews with candidates on the November 3rd general election ballot is brought to you by Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. Both organizations are nonpartisan. That means we never support candidates nor political parties. And both organizations consider it their mission to provide voters with information about each election. I'm Judith Cranus, a member of the League. First, if you are not registered to vote, go to votespa.com to register. Votespa.com comes in English and Spanish. You have until October 19th to register, but the smart thing is, do it now. And if you do not want to stand in line on Election Day, apply for a mail-in ballot. Again, go to votespa.com and do it now. And if you give them your email address, they will send you back emails each step of the process so you always know what's happening with your ballot. And when your ballot arrives, get the information you need on the candidates, watching programs like this, going to their websites, to make your decision. And once you've made your decision, mail that ballot in right away. We help our Berks County Election Services Office handle this election smoothly if we are timely. If you choose to go to your polling place on Election Day, polls are open from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. This year, we will vote for Pennsylvania Attorney General, Auditor General, and Treasurer. We will also elect representatives to the U.S. Congress, to the Pennsylvania Senate, and the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. The League and BCTV invited all but the statewide candidates to be interviewed. Some did not reply, some declined. Those who agreed will be asked the same questions in the same order with the same time limits as others running for the same office. These interviews will be available on BCTV's webpage and YouTube channel. And if you watch the interviews of two competing candidates, you can compare their answers to make your decision on how you will vote. This interview is for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in the 130th District, and we do have a map for you. This district is eastern Berks County. State representatives serve a 2-year term in the state legislature in Harrisburg. They initiate legislation and vote to create laws. They pass the budget, including taxes and expenditures of the state. They offer help about state government to constituents of their district. The salary for a state senator is $88,610 per year, plus benefits and expenses. The two candidates are Lamar Foley, a Democrat, and David Maloney, the Republican. This interview is with Lamar Foley. He is the challenger. Welcome, Dr. Foley.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us, please, why do you want to be a state representative, and what are your qualifications for this position?
Well, I've lived in the area of the 130th District almost my whole life, except for my years away for education. I was born near Boyertown and in Pottstown and grew up near Boyertown, and now live in the Ole Valley for the last 27 years. I have had a medical practice in Boyertown since about 1986, off and on, and in and around the district since 2013. So I think I'm very familiar with the people in the area and with the culture in the area. And I, like many others, would like to see good representation, and at this stage in my career, I feel available to be able to do that and offer my services not only to the district but also to the state of Pennsylvania.
What are the 3 most important things you would like to accomplish?
Well, being a medical doctor and being a family physician, certainly over the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen some changes in medicine. It has become much more expensive in many ways. We've also seen limits of accessibility to medicine. So I'd like to see, number one, some changes in the healthcare provision to all of us. I really think eventually we want to have some kind of coverage in a private system for all of us in the district and state, and hopefully in the whole country. Other issues I'm very concerned about are the cost of living, which is in this particular district reflected in high residential real estate taxes. So I'd like to address that and help to bring that under control. Also, the environment and the destructive effects that we've had with the fracking need to be under control, and that's another area that I'm really concerned about for the state.
What do you think about how the state has managed COVID-19? And do you see a greater impact on minorities and women?
COVID-19 is, of course, a problem that had come out of nowhere, unpredictable, and we still don't know all about it. I think there have been some aspects of the management that have been very good. I think overall Pennsylvania has done better than many other states in the country. So I think we need to remember that the people working on this problem with COVID are trying to do their best. This is unprecedented, and things have not gone perfectly smoothly, but I wouldn't expect that they would have necessarily. I think we're doing well, but I think it's very important for people to realize that this is not over. We may have a lot more to deal with yet. There is a vaccine coming out soon. I think that we need to make sure that as many people get this vaccine as possible. And yes, so I will leave it at that.
There is currently no county health department in Berks County. Do we need one? And should this be paid for by the state government?
Well, certainly over years of practice in Boyertown, it would have been nice to have a Berks County Department of Health. I would like to see that happen. I think it would be very useful, and particularly with Reading and all the problems faced in that area. As far as funding for it goes, I think the state should be, I think COVID-19 shows us that the state really has an interest in being providing funding for a state, for a county medical society.
What do you think are common sense gun violence controls the state should have in place?
Well, I think, again, gun violence can be related to mental health issues. I think certainly the Constitution of the Pennsylvania and the Constitution of the United States provide for protection for people who feel they need guns for their own protection and for, as a militia, for insurrections and things like that. I think those are pretty much tenets that are well established. I think as far as gun violence goes, I think it's the type of thing where those who have abused their right to have a firearm should really be excluded from future rights in that regard. But I think evaluation and constant monitoring of the mental health aspects of people who have had violent behavior in the past or are felt to be at higher risk for using guns and violence should be a priority.
As a legislature, what will your role be to reduce violence in our communities?
Well, again, violence is born of frustration oftentimes, and also that goes along with poverty and with frustration through economic reasons. I think, providing adequate employment, providing adequate health care are going to be really fundamental in reducing violence. I think the provision of health care, having everyone have access to it, is extremely helpful, because without that, there's no way to anticipate the problems that come up that can cause the problems we want to fix.
Following the census, our state legislators will redraw district lines for federal and state officials. This has led to gerrymandering, districts that favor one party over others. Do you think this is fair to voters? And if not, what will you do to give voters fair districts?
I think it's very important. Again, this issue has been with us hundreds of years. I would like to see a independent citizens commission work with this issue. I think House Bill 2638 would be a big help, and I would be behind that. I think the frustration with many people with government has to do with the feeling of their voice not being heard. Oftentimes that's related to gerrymandering, whether or not people realize that. So I think that, having that independent commission and taking the partisan politics out of it is going to be part and parcel of restoring confidence in people's sense of the government being for them and not for special interests.
Small business is important to Berks County's economy. Will you favor additional state funds to help them survive the pandemic?
I think that's very important. There are winners and losers with the pandemic. Some businesses are doing very well with it, others are not. I think small business has been the backbone of our community for hundreds of years. The larger businesses that are doing well, really need to do their fair share in paying taxes and getting things under control. So yes, I would be in favor of supports, whether it's tax credits or other supports for small business as a result of the COVID problem.
What should be done to prevent evictions and address homelessness during the pandemic?
Well, evictions are going to be counterproductive in this pandemic. Could there be state supports to help protect against that or protect landlords from losses? I think that's a possibility. We don't know how bad the COVID-19 situation is going to be yet, so I think that's something that's going to require further study, but certainly having lots of people lose their dwelling because of this problem is not going to help us in the long run.
What is your plan to address crumbling infrastructure in the state?
Again, this is a topic I haven't studied in great detail, but we have to realize that structures don't last forever, of course, and we need to constantly address that. I think that's eventually going to be a boost for us. By addressing the crumbling infrastructure, we create jobs, and that's going to be an important part of our recovery.
Will you support raising the minimum wage, and what should the minimum wage be?
I do support raising the minimum wage. I think $15 an hour, again, is certainly not unreasonable. The question is, how do we get there and how quickly? I would be in favor of raising it over a couple of years, by 2023 perhaps. And in order to protect business, I would say small businesses really should be supported with a tax credit for accomplishing that rise in the minimum wage.
Agriculture counts for about half of Berks County's economy. Our local farmers are adapting, as much as possible, to changes in the climate. Do you think the state should do more to address climate change to protect agriculture? And if so, what should the state do?
Yeah, again, the problem with climate change, I believe, is real. I think one of the first things we need to do is recognize the fact that the climate is changing. This is not something that's even equivocal to the scientists involved in studying it. Agriculture will be affected if we don't get control of the fundamental problems that are causing it. The carbon emissions and fracking are, in my estimation, very big problems. And all this is going to affect the farmers, and I think we have to, it's a great priority of my own to protect the family farms and try to provide them with whatever measures they feel that we need to do to protect them. I think going right to the source and asking the people involved in farming to be part of this whole process is going to be very important.
Pennsylvania has passed bills to help root out rogue police. Would we be better off if we separated the crime-fighting function of the police from its social service functions?
I do believe that there may be some benefit in that. However, I think that refocusing on the training of police and intensifying some of the training may be helpful as well. That can be dually trained. I think police officers in the more rural areas have a different type of job to do than those in the cities. We have a rural district, and I think their more intense training in each of the disciplines that mental health and as well as social issues, as well as normal police work that's done, is going to be important. Some of those functions can be separated out, but I think certainly an enlargement of the police force and with police subspecialists in certain aspects of human behavior and emergency situations would be beneficial.
Do you believe there is systemic racism in Pennsylvania? And if so, how will you help change it?
Systemic racism might be part of Homo sapiens or the human existence to some extent. So I would say yes, systemic racism does exist. White racism is there. Whether we recognize it or not and the degree of it is debatable, but I think it is definitely there. And I don't know that you can pass a law to prevent it, but I think the most important thing is for people to be familiar with one another, community involvement, people of color, and we all need to get together and recognize each other as human beings. And I don't know, again, that there's a law to prevent problems as far as that goes, but there is a lot we can do, in terms of making life easier. I think the idea of reparations and that type of thing is something that needs to be discussed, not for a windfall profit, but for education and opportunities that may not be there because of systemic racism.
Discrimination in housing against LGBTQ people is still legal in Pennsylvania. Should we have laws to stop this discrimination?
I believe that LGBTQ people should be treated like any others. I don't know that there should be any reason for a person to refuse to rent to someone on that basis. So yes, I think we ought to recognize that fact.
There are inequities in the funding of our public schools. Schools in rich zip codes thrive. Schools in poor zip codes struggle. What will you do to provide every child in Pennsylvania a quality education?
I agree that this is, certainly a problem, and I think educational opportunity is one of those fundamental things the state will benefit from. The current way taxes are used is really not as helpful in promoting education as they could be. I would like to see the state allocate money for school districts and be responsible for the monetary support of those school districts. I think with that kind of a system, we would be much better able to see parity in education and improvement. Everyone ought to have the best educational opportunities possible, and I think that's one way to do it.
People never like taxes, yet they are necessary. In this time of increasing disparity between incomes of the well-to-do and the poor, is a flat income tax, such as we have in Pennsylvania, is that still appropriate? And please tell us why.
Yeah, the flat income tax is not the only source of revenue, but it is a burden on the people who make less money. I think, from my standpoint, I'd like to see recognize that there are larger corporations that really don't seem to be paying their fair share of taxes. And I think if we address that concern, we may not have as high income taxes in the state as we would otherwise have. But I think a graduated income tax is probably in order and probably would be helpful for the state of Pennsylvania.
The next budget will be very tight because of the impact of COVID-19. Where would you cut? What services do you feel are essential?
Well, that's a very good question, and that will be a challenge for whoever is sitting in the state legislature, of course. I think that we need to, again, look at revenue in terms of who's thriving at the present time, who may be fortunate to be having better incomes due to COVID-19, and shift some of the responsibility to those people. I think cutting, typically the tendency is to look at social services first as a way to balance the budget. I think that's a mistake, especially now with COVID-19. There's a lot more difficulty for people that have social challenges to begin with. So one thing I would say we want to do is to avoid the reflex of cutting the budget for social services.
Do you believe the fracking industry has caused environmental damage? And if so, what dollar amount of fees or fines should be charged, and how should the monies be dispersed?
Well, that's a very complex question. I would say, based on the statewide grand jury, the 43rd statewide grand jury report from June of this year, it's evident that there are severe problems due to fracking. And I think that we need to first address the 8 recommendations that were made by the grand jury. And as part of that, I think we're going to need perhaps a special commission, to decide the monetary damages and how they should be spent. I can't, at this point, not knowing the details in the whole situation, can't really address that specifically, but it's certainly a very important question to be answered.
Should Pennsylvania decrease the use of fossil fuels and carbon emissions? And if so, how? And what is a reasonable time frame to do this?
Well, again, that's a hot item. I think, of course, we need to do it. I think the wind farms are probably one of the better ways to go about this. Solar energy as well. I think we need to, we have to start on it. I think people have to just get behind the idea that we need to do this. I think it's going to create jobs, and it will be beneficial to all of us to have this done. As far as timing of it, the sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned. There are people who say, well, maybe over 100 years we can get it done. I think we need to really start now and not wait so long to do that.
We do have 30 seconds left, or 60 seconds left. Would you like to make a closing statement?
Yes, I think that there are a lot of things we can do in Pennsylvania to, and in the district, to make our lives better. I think there's a big concern with real estate, residential real estate property taxes. I think, again, we can address that issue. We can address climate change. We can start to transform the economy from the petroleum-based products to wind and solar and other energies. I think these are things that are not impossible. You just have to have the will to do them, as are some of the other efforts in social structures as well. So I'm hopeful that I can help produce some of these changes, and working together, trying to represent the wishes of the people of this district is going to be important. I feel a representative is best suited to be listening to the people of the district, where many of the better ideas come from. And so that would be my effort in the State House.
Thank you, Dr. Foley. Now, I remind our viewers that these interviews are available on the BCTV webpage and on the YouTube channel, and they will be available in both English and Spanish. And if you watch the interviews of two competing candidates, you can compare those answers to decide how you want to vote for that office. The election is November 3rd. Polls are open from 7 in the morning to 8 at night. You can find your polling place on votespa.com. You can do just about anything related to the election on votespa.com. It's the one source to go to make it easy. So if you're not yet registered, go there. You have until October 19th, but it's much smarter to do it now. Likewise, if you don't want to stand at your poll, there's that mail-in ballot. It's new to Pennsylvania this year. It worked really well, in my case, in the spring, and I'm guessing it's going to work well for all of us in the fall. I know our county commissioners have added 10 extra election workers in the office to make sure everything goes smoothly. They want a smooth election, and we're going to have one here. So thank you for watching Candidates Up Front.
We make about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.